General Hospital spoilers reveal that the stories that were once hidden, denied, or regarded as mere rumors, have now been confirmed in an undeniable way. Every fragmented piece of what seemed like an unclear picture has officially come to a close, creating a tumultuous scene where the center is no one but Willow, the woman once seen as a symbol of sacrifice, selflessness, and softness in the harsh world of Port Charles. But now, Willow is no longer the submissive, easily manipulated, or easily forgiving girl she once was. The events that have unfolded recently have pushed her to the very limit of trust and endurance, forcing her to face the painful truth that if she doesn't protect herself, doesn't stand up and make new choices, she will forever remain a puppet in a calculated game led by Drew. The haunting feelings that once consumed Willow are no longer vague doubts or wavering emotions, but a very real fear that she placed her trust in the wrong place. She begins to reflect on every promise Drew made, every decision he pushed her to believe was right, and every moment he used emotions to control her responses and choices. Willow no longer sees love, no longer feels companionship, all that remains is the dense shell of manipulation. And this realization compels her to do what she never dared to consider before: decisively remove Drew from her life. This decision is not simply the end of a personal relationship. It is a direct blow to the heart of a power structure built since Michael left and Drew gradually seized everything. Willow, who was once the emotional core of both men, is now the one causing that structure to collapse. And within that collapse lies a series of unforeseen consequences. Drew, who has always appeared calm, rational, and composed, begins to show signs of someone losing control. He not only loses a woman but also the position he worked so hard to establish, as Michael's replacement, as the one Willow trusted, as the person others saw as the pillar after the upheaval. Willow turning her back on Drew marks the beginning of a series of irreparable rifts. Because this act does not happen in silence. It comes with a slew of evidence, revelations, and public affirmations that she was led astray, that Drew manipulated her, exploited her emotions, and used the guise of protection to isolate her from the world. And when this truth comes to light, it's like a fire burning away all the masks that existed in the microcosm of Port Charles society. Michael, though far away, is pulled back into the vortex. For now Willow is no longer the cold woman who betrayed him, she is the brave woman rising from a toxic relationship that she herself had a hand in building. The shock Willow causes does not just affect her or Drew, but everyone who ever placed hope, intervened, or took a side in the battle for custody of Wiley and Amelia. Carly, Diane, Jason, they will have to adjust their strategies because Willow is no longer someone who needs to be guided. She is now the one making decisions. And that decision is forcing all the forces around her to restructure what they thought they had control over. However, the most worrying part is not the immediate reactions, but the long-lasting domino effect that will follow Willow's decision. Drew is not one to give up easily. A man who once sacrificed his reputation, emotions, and power to establish a new position will never accept being discarded without retaliation. This puts Port Charles in a state of new alarm, where a disaster is approaching faster than ever before. A disaster not coming from force or external conspiracy, but from the internal breakdown between those who once called each other family, lovers, and companions. And Willow, by her own choice, has sparked a chain of events that no one, not even she, can predict the outcome of. A new chapter is opening, with a different mindset and paths that are no longer easily predictable. Willow is no longer the victim. But in her journey to take control of her destiny, she has created a power vacuum, a psychological instability, and a series of enemies she has never had to face before. And from here, everything will change. No more gentleness. No more forgiveness. Only choices, confrontation, and consequences. Willow is facing a deep inner crisis that no one might notice on the outside, but inside is a growing chain of chaos, simmering and dangerous like a volcano waiting to erupt. After all the turmoil, the shocks to her faith, her family, and the silent betrayal from those she once trusted completely, Willow has now come to an important crossroads in her life, where she is forced to choose. Either continue down the path of a toxic relationship that wears her spirit down day by day, or decisively cut it off to save herself before it's too late. And this means an irreversible decision. Removing Drew from her life. It has become painfully clear that Drew is no longer the ideal companion. Once a safe haven after Michael's departure, once the one who made Willow feel understood, supported, and shared the burdens of motherhood, being a wife, and a daughter, now that very man has become the symbol of every mistake she ever made in trusting him. The advice disguised as protection, the decisions that seemed full of love but were actually subtle manipulation. The cold hugs that felt more like obligation than emotional connection, all of this is making Willow feel trapped in a version of her life she no longer controls. Each passing day makes her feel further removed from her true self. And she knows that if she continues like this, she will completely lose her identity, the only thing left to remind her that she still has value. Willow has tried harder than anyone could imagine. She remained silent when Drew started building legal strategies to attack Michael. She kept calm when she saw Drew gradually changing her, forcing her to cut ties with Jason, Carly, and even Nina. She was patient when Drew blamed Michael for daring to leave for treatment, painting him as a neglectful father when, in fact, it was an act of self-sacrifice for survival. Willow endured all of this just because she wanted to believe Drew was doing what was best for her and the children. But now, as every facade begins to crack, as the sweet words can no longer hide the cold controlling nature beneath, Willow realizes that submission is no longer a wise choice. She no longer wants to live in that gilded cage. She wants to break free. She needs freedom. And Drew is the first one she must remove if she wants to live true to herself. But what makes this decision dangerous is not just the end of a relationship. It is the retaliation it may bring. Drew is not someone who can easily be pushed aside without consequences. He is the type of person who, once pushed out of power, will do whatever it takes to drag others down with him. Willow understands this. She knows that if she speaks up, if she admits to everyone that she was wrong to trust Drew, she will have to face an entire campaign of exposure, defamation, and retaliation. But what scares her more is not the counterattacks, but the fact that if she doesn't act now, everything will continue to spiral, and her children, Wiley and Amelia, will grow up in a fake environment, where the truth is distorted into excuses, where feelings are molded into compliance and control. Willow no longer wants to live as a woman who only knows how to nod, only listens to advice for her own good, but which actually serves someone else's interests. She doesn't want to repeat the past, where every choice was decided by someone else. Willow wants to take back her life, and to do that, she knows she must end things with Drew, decisively, without hesitation, leaving no room for pity. Because if she hesitates, she will always be a pawn in someone else's hand, and will never truly be free. This removal is not just about emotions. It is about severing ties with a part of darkness that she allowed to invade her life. But that very act will trigger a series of uncontrollable reactions. Drew may react in ways that are wiser and more dangerous than ever. The forces that once sided with him, those who appeared neutral but were actually secretly manipulating the story behind the scenes, will now start to turn. Willow is no longer protected by the shell of the woman in need of saving. Now, she will be the one standing in the middle of the storm, and she must protect herself. Once the decision is made, all the consequences will follow. The disasters will not stop at a simple argument or breakup, but may lead to a complete breakdown emotionally, legally, and in terms of trust within the small community of Port Charles. Willow understands this. But this time, she is not afraid. Because she has endured for too long. And now is the time for her to step out of the darkness, not for anyone else, but for herself. For her children who deserve to live in an environment without lies. For her heart, which deserves to heal through its own strength, not hollow words of comfort. And no matter what disaster may come, she is ready to face it. Because nothing is worse than continuing to live in a lie that she once believed was love. Willow is standing up. And this will be the moment that redefines her entire being, no longer the faded shadow behind Drew, but a woman who truly owns her life. The story is entering a phase filled with chaos and drama as Willow, after a long period of being torn between emotions, trust, and wrong decisions, finally realizes that if she doesn't act now, she will lose everything. This moment of clarity does not come from advice or a random incident, but from the brutal reality that her position as the legal mother of Wiley and Amelia is under serious threat. The forces that once stood by her are now fracturing. Those who promised to protect her are now using her name for their own purposes, and Drew, once her pillar of support, is now the biggest obstacle in her fight to regain custody of her children. Willow no longer has any choice but to confront this head-on, without hiding, without avoiding. She must step into the light and face all those who have manipulated her life, pulling the strings behind the scenes, making her believe she was loved, when in fact, she was merely a pawn in a much bigger game. What makes everything even more insane is that Willow now no longer has any real support. Carly is focused on her own battles, Michael is still in the recovery phase. Jason is trapped between loyalty and truth, and Drew has openly turned her into a puppet of legal power and the media. Now, Willow is alone. Alone in the fight to reclaim what should have been hers. The right to raise and protect her children, the right to live as a real mother, not a mere figurehead to legitimize cold legal agreements. And as she faces this battle in solitude, Willow begins to change. She is no longer weak, no longer silent or guilty for having trusted the wrong person. She begins to gather evidence, trace back legal decisions, and start asking questions, not for others, but for herself. Who is truly protecting Wiley and Amelia? Who is making her lose herself? And most importantly, who is capable of standing up and changing it all? The only answer is herself. However, Willow's actions will not only change the course of the story, but will also make her old enemies more dangerous. Drew will not let her walk away quietly. Those who once protected him, from Rick, lawyers, to influential figures in the medical and legal systems of Port Charles, will begin to surface and strike back with ruthless force. They will create an image of Willow as out of control, an unstable mother, a woman pushing herself into a deep hole with emotional choices. They will target her weaknesses, focus on her moments of hesitation, on her medical history and emotional dependency during Michael's disappearance. If Willow is not careful, if she does not reinforce her belief and reasoning in every decision, she will be knocked down before she even gets close to the court. The worst part is the isolation. She knows she won't be believed by many. Those who supported her in the past are now tired of her half-hearted actions. Willow must start from scratch, with strangers, with new lawyers, with untouched documents. And in this journey, she will uncover even darker truths, not just about Drew, but about the people she once admired and trusted. Contracts signed behind her back, unclear financial backing, nurses bribed to conceal records, all these will unfold like a vast network, with her very self, being the key link they need to control. Willow understands that when she resists, she is not just fighting for herself. She is breaking apart an entire power structure built to control the lives of women like her. And therefore, this fight is not simply about regaining 2 children. It is about reclaiming autonomy, regaining a voice, and regaining the value that has been buried under lies spoken for too long. Lies that everyone has grown accustomed to hearing. Willow stands on the edge. Ahead of her is danger, loss, and betrayal that will continue to unfold. But this time, she will not retreat. Because if she continues to stay silent, pretending everything is okay, what she loses will not only be Wiley and Amelia, it will be her soul, her heart, and the life she has fought so hard to preserve through all the pain. She has been weak, misled, and gone astray before. But now, Willow is starting over. Alone. Strong. And ready to step into the fire to protect what she loves most, with all the courage a true mother can have. One of the profound adjustments forming in Willow's inner self and actions is the shift in how she perceives the core relationships around her. Especially with Michael, who was once her biggest support during her most difficult years, the one who held her heart, trust, and future. Now, as the stories surrounding the custody of Wiley and Amelia become increasingly complicated and chaotic, and as Drew is gradually pushed out of the center of her life, Willow begins to clearly realize that if she truly wants to rebuild everything on the foundation of truth, she cannot continue to avoid interactions with Michael, the real father, both biologically and emotionally, of her children. These changes do not come as a sudden epiphany but as the result of a long series of events that have quietly accumulated. Moments when Willow had to witness Drew's abuse of power, when she was isolated from loved ones, and when she herself felt she no longer had control over the story of her life. She once thought she was strong by remaining silent, by following the path others drew for her in the name of, for the children. But now, every adjustment begins to turn in a new direction. Willow understands that in order to regain not only legal custody but also the right to live as a true mother, she must reconnect with Michael, need harmony, and require an authentic emotional alliance to push back the fake facade surrounding them. This shift, though quiet, creates a psychological explosion within Willow and in the current dynamics of the characters involved. Her active attempts to interact again with Michael, even if initially just fleeting appearances or cold exchanges, have caused the forces that once controlled her to lose direction. Drew cannot accept this. Those who once supported Drew's presence in Willow's life begin to doubt. Even seemingly neutral characters like Nina, Carly, and Diane are forced to reconsider Michael's true role, no longer just the sick man in Germany but a father returning with one goal, to reclaim his children and the truth. And this also means Willow can no longer keep her distance. She must open up, not because Michael asks, but because she herself needs a real connection. A restart of the relationship that was interrupted by misunderstandings, pain, and manipulation. Willow knows she cannot erase the past, cannot pretend that Michael never left. But she also understands that if she continues to rely on Drew, who no longer represents protection, but control, she will push Michael out of their children's lives once again. And this time, the loss will be permanent. Thus, one of the biggest ideas brewing in Willow's mind is not only to regain custody through legal arguments but to return Michael to his rightful place, not as an accused absentee father, but as part of a real family. A part that both children need, and that she also needs. This interaction comes not from pity, not from compromise, but from Willow realizing that, despite the distance and pain, Michael has never manipulated her the way Drew has. And this new dialogue will be the starting point for a series of adjustments to follow, in perspective, in behavior, and in the belief system Willow thought she had lost long ago. This change will not be easy, because every step Willow takes toward Michael means she must turn her back on Drew, face retaliation, the new enemies that are beginning to reveal themselves, and accusations from those who once called her the righteous side. But she understands that no one else can make the right choice for her now. No one else can restore a real family for Wiley and Amelia unless she takes action. And once Willow takes that first step, Port Charles will witness not just the return of a strong mother, but of a woman who is no longer silent, no longer being led, but one who holds her destiny in her own hands. Willow had reached the breaking point of her pride, where she could no longer pretend to be strong or keep up a facade. After all the hurt she had caused, the silences, the cold words, the moments when she stood by Drew and turned her back on the man who had sacrificed himself for her, Willow finally understood that there was nothing more important in this world than being forgiven. Why the person she had hurt the most, Michael. No longer beating around the bush, no longer pretending to be okay, Willow fell to her knees with her heart and her naked vulnerability, begging forgiveness not just for what she had done, but for everything she had failed to protect while Michael was in her life. That act, a heartfelt plea, a willing collapse, triggered an irreversible chain of change. No longer just rumors, no longer hidden conflicts, now the story between Willow and Michael has shifted from quiet to public. From tension to direct confrontation with everything that is happening in Port Charles. The forgiveness that Willow begs for is not simply an acceptance from the man she once loved, but a desire to be cleansed of all mistakes, to be freed from the ghost of guilt that has haunted her all this time. Especially when she once helped Drew smear Michael's honor in the custody battle for Wiley and Amelia. Willow is no longer a victim. She has become the one to blame. And it is her daring to face that has caused all the power structures that once oppressed her to begin to shake. Drew, who once manipulated her like an emotional pawn, will not easily accept this change. Because Willow's request for forgiveness means she is withdrawing all legal, moral and spiritual support for him. She is gradually distancing herself from the alliance Drew tried to build, to return to the only person worthy of standing by her as a father, Michael. And that is what creates a real shock. Because when Willow puts down her pride and asks for forgiveness, she also inadvertently opens the door to a war that is more explosive than ever. Lawyers, relatives, and those who once cheered for Drew now begin to feel unstable. Nina, the biological mother who was rejected by Willow, is now confused when witnessing her daughter actively turn to Michael. Jason, Carly, Diane, the people in the middle, are forced to choose sides again. And Michael himself, though still full of hurt, cannot help but be moved by that sincere apology. Because love, even buried, never really disappears. The conversation between Willow and Michael is no longer about the past. It is about redemption. It is about the future of Wiley and Amelia. It is about who is worthy of being called family. Willow apologizes not to rekindle old love, but because she understands that she cannot continue to live in the shadow of guilt. She needs forgiveness to become a true mother, a true woman, and most importantly, for once in her life, she can hold her head up high without being tormented by the past. That event completely changes the order of all relationships in Port Charles. Willow is no longer a weak figure manipulated by circumstances, but becomes the central character carrying the weight of truth, of regret, and of powerful transformation. And it is that transformation that opens up a new earthquake, where love, truth, and forgiveness will decide who will stand firm, and who will be swept away forever.